Hey everyone, it's back to philosophical questions. I'm Edward. This is question 3 on my list of 205 philosophical questions that I am trying to answer in no way half-assed method. So what do we have for today? The question is there a meaning to life? And if so, what is it? So I thought the previous questions were difficult. This one is probably equally difficult, I suppose. How to best approach this? Well, I guess we could start just from the basic level, kind of like we did before. I suppose if you have nothing, you probably need a few things to be happy in life. So I suppose that would be your meaning of life. If you have nothing, you're going to need food, clothing, and shelter. Of course, once you have that, you probably have a few other things that you need in your life, and that's where the question gets more interesting. Looking at it from a religious point of view, clearly then, if you are a believer, the track of your life is somewhat set out in front of you in a very sort of clear way. For example, Christians, it's basically about getting to heaven, so whatever you believe gets you to heaven is your meaning of life, I suppose, there. Not so helpful for the rest of the world who is not Christian. So where can you go after that? Well, you can look at the other religions. Here in Asia, in Taiwan, where I am, we have things like Buddhism, Taoism, or as they would say, Taoism. These certainly give their own variations on this question of what is the meaning of life. I do have sort of an attraction to the Taoist idea of the way, sort of fitting yourself into the way, the way of life, or the path that you should be leading, or rather the path that has already been laid out for you. And not diverging from that path. Of course, the question is how to find the path and all of those related complications. But I suppose if you believe that there is such a path out there and simply need to fit yourself into it, could be a reasonable meaning. However, I think there's a large amount of people who religion is probably not going to be the answer to this question, right? And even if you are religious, I would think that there are more, I guess we could call them sort of practical considerations for this question of what is the meaning of life. Okay, you want to get into heaven, but what else are you going to do with your time on earth? I think that is a key part of this question of the meaning of life. So perhaps to go to the complete opposite end of that religious question, there is, of course, the possibility of being a nihilist, nihilism. For those who don't know what this is, essentially you could say, everything is meaningless, nothing matters, nothing is important. So this is kind of a depressing thought. It's probably not going to be for everyone either. But it certainly answers the question, what is the meaning of life? Well, life has no meaning. And nothing matters anyway. In particular, you don't matter, so stop asking silly questions. Sure, that one could be an option, but a somewhat depressing option, I suppose. What else can we think about? Well, we could look deep into the past. We could look at some of the ideas like hedonism, sort of the pursuit of pleasure as the highest goal. Whatever gives you pleasure is the good thing. Some people talk about sort of Epicurean goals from the philosopher Epicurus. He is often actually associated with this pursuit of pleasure, but actually he interestingly pushed for moderation and just finding the things that could give you pleasure, but only in moderation, rather than doing these things to excess. But why not push it to excess? I mean, if pleasure is the highest goal, then, drink all you want, do all the drugs you want, have all the sex you want. Certainly sounds nice. This probably relates to another idea, which is just focus on the present, right? Don't worry about the future, and certainly don't worry about the past, because the past has already happened and you can't change it. So just focus on right now and focus on what makes you happy right now. Sounds good, but I am sort of reminded of a story from The Simpsons, the TV show, the cartoon show, where Homer, the main character, is lying on the couch, stuffing his face with, pizza and beer and potato chips and all the unhealthy stuff. And his wife, Marge, comes into the room and says, "Look what you're doing to yourself. You're not going to live very well. Your future is going to be terrible. Your health is going to be terrible." And Homer just looks at her with a sad smile and says, "That's a problem for future Homer." I really pity future Homer. And in a way, he is right. Future Homer is perhaps not the same guy as present Homer. But I think future Homer is going to have some words to say to him. So this is probably not the best strategy, I suppose, for finding your meaning of life, only doing what's pleasurable, because the consequences of this are probably going to be severe. So I would avoid that. What else can we do? In America, people often talk about fulfilling your potential. So we always hear about people wasting their potential. Like, oh, what a waste. He could have been so great at something, but he wasted his life on drugs or whatever. This sounds good, but discovering what your potential is another complication, right? Does everyone have a potential? What does that mean? I mean, on average, people are average. So if you have an average life, is that achieving your potential? I suppose so. Is that something particularly exciting? Is that what people aspire to? I hope I can live an average life and do average things and then die in an average way. It doesn't sound exciting or motivating for that matter. So this is a possibility, I suppose, right? Your meaning in life is fulfilling your potential, or at least not wasting your potential to any real degree. But again, how do we determine that? And looking at it from the outside, it's kind of a subjective thing, right? I look at you and say, well, you seem very smart, but you're only doing this, right? You're just you're super smart, but you're only working in a cafe or something, right? You're serving coffee. So I make a subjective judgment about you to say you've wasted your potential. But maybe you're actually happy there, right? You're living a comfortable life, you're with your friends, and that is making you happy. So who is correct in that part, right? Am I correct to say that they wasted their potential, or are they living the life that they wanted? So this actually connects to another piece, right? If you feel happy, right, is that enough? Like the person working at the coffee shop, even if they're a genius, but they're not doing anything with that intelligence, are they wasting their life, or because they feel comfortable and happy, are they living the best life that they can? And is that really the meaning of life, to be happy? In America, where I grew up, there is actually in our Constitution, or is it the Declaration of Independence? I have to check that. Either way, we have it written in our legal documents that we guarantee the pursuit of happiness, right? We are the only country in the world that actually has this written into our legal system. The pursuit of happiness should be guaranteed. Clearly, this is a goal, right? We are aiming at happiness. Again, sounds good on the surface, but we have to look deeper. What do we mean by happiness? I already mentioned people, doing drugs or drinking to excess. This certainly, at least in the moment, can make you feel very, very happy, right? Of course, the long-term consequences of that could be very, very negative, right? So you're not going to feel happy forever. or if you just ran out of drugs or something. For the moment when you're not on the drugs, you're going to feel terrible as well, most likely. So how do we define that happiness? It has to be, I suppose, somewhat of a subjective judgment. And some of the philosophers have looked at this for a long time. They talked about differing degrees of happiness. You can imagine different scenarios. In sort of a nightmare scenario that we see often with AI, we told the AI, we want to be happy. So the AI simply takes our brains out of our body, puts it in a fishbowl or something, and connects up our brains to all the wires, and boom, we're happy. But was that really what we meant? Is that really what we wanted? And is that really happy in the way that we mean? So happiness may be a good sort of goal, a good sort of meaning of life, but happiness probably needs to be expanded as a definition from just a emotional or mental feeling. It could be, the groups of friends that you have, the fact that you are using your mind, you're thinking things through. I think it was Socrates who talked about the examined life, or the unexamined life is not worth living. So putting all of these things together perhaps is creating that happiness. Maybe we can call it a deeper happiness, not just that surface level emotional happiness that you might get from drugs or having your brain in a fishbowl type happiness. That is a possibility. Some of the other things that people say is, well, the meaning of life, perhaps we can take it to a wider thing, right? Most of the things I just said are kind of a personal feeling, right? I'm achieving my personal happiness, or I'm finding the path in my religion, and I'm doing what I believe is right to get to wherever I want to go. But there are bigger ideas, right? Sort of utopian ideas. Society as a group should be working to create the perfect society. And we've seen this in political philosophy, perhaps most famously with communism. They were trying to create a perfect society where everyone would be happy to the degree that was determined by that political idea. Sounded good, didn't work very well at all, and doesn't seem like it's that feasible even in the future, no matter what sort of tweaks we might make to that system. There's certainly lots of other methods out there. We've seen perhaps the negative outcomes of these in books like A Brave New World and 1984. So, societal goals perhaps are good, but when they are going for the utopia, that is where the danger lurks. Not bad to have a societal sort of goal as a meaning of life, perhaps, right? As a process of steady improvement. And of course, we would have to sort of reconsider that on a sort of perhaps, daily basis. What do we mean by improvement, and where are we going? So that would probably be a debate that would be ongoing forever. But process of improvement, not particularly inspiring sounding when you say it that way, but it sounds nice to me, at least. We're steadily moving ahead, right? And if we look at history, even with all its stops and starts, I think we can say that there has been sort of steady progress, right? We've moved away from some terrible things. By no means are we perfect, but I think we're moving on a good track. Is that the meaning of life then? Just improving society as a whole? I like that one. That one's not bad. It is a little bit impersonal, right? If you're looking for your own individual meaning of life, if you're not in the government or something, perhaps you're feeling like you're not having any real impact on building that, the great new society, whatever that's supposed to be or whatever that means. So I think there probably does need to be some type of individual part to this. Perhaps from the societal point of view, that's something more like direct democracy. That could give you some type of feeling of empowerment or input into the system. But I think there are a lot of people who would probably not find that particularly interesting, right? They don't actually want to bother with these big issue questions, and they would much rather focus on themselves. Perhaps bringing it down small again to that individual basis. For them, the meaning of life is, have a family, and and you have children, and they have children, and your DNA gets passed down through the generations, and that is the purpose of life. Certainly for all animals and anything that's living, I think we can say that is the genetic purpose of life, right? Is to pass yourself on, genetically speaking, to continue that line, the DNA line that goes all the way back to, the first fish or whatever that crawled out of the ocean and now ended up looking like us. That is, I think, true. Certainly true that there is Darwinian evolution happening, and our genes are fighting in a way to pass themselves down and create further generations. But is that a meaning to life? It's again very impersonal, right? Taking it up a level again to, the meaning of life is to have a family. That one feels personal, at least, right? I can imagine that being a meaning of life to many people. But again, of course, that would not be for everyone, right? There's certainly lots of people who choose, or through no fault of their own, end up not having a family. So there is a danger here, right, of saying, or I suppose there's a danger of laying out a meaning of life that people may end up failing to achieve, right? And then are we going to talk about those people as failures? So, for example, if we did say, okay, the meaning of life, we got the societal goal, we know about the gene stuff, but for the individual, the meaning of life is have a family, right? Have children and look after the children and have a nice little life with the family. And then, the children have their children and so on and so on. If that's the meaning of life, then the people who choose not to have children or cannot have children, there is a danger that we would judge them for sure, right? And what would they feel, right? If they buy into the system, would they also feel sort of terrible about themselves? So there is, again, an issue about generalizing these things. So that leads to the question, can you choose individually your own meaning to life? Well, of course you could. But I suppose there are limitations on it. I may well be able to say, I think the meaning of life is I can go around, punching people in the face whenever I want. That is a stupid meaning of life, but I could do it, and I would be quickly stopped from being able to fully actualize my meaning of life after probably the first one or two people I managed to punch in the face. This then goes to the sort of larger issue as well of, is it okay to allow people even to choose their own meaning of life, or should we as a society agree upon these goals, right? Certainly we talked about the societal goal, but should society also sort of in a way set what the individual goals are? And in a way, I suppose it has, depending on where you live right now. There probably is a vast bias towards that idea of creating a family, right? Of having children, and looking after your parents, things like that. Particularly here in Asia, there's that tradition of family. So if you're not fulfilling that, you are not properly living your life. You're not fulfilling the meaning of life. There needs to be that balance for sure. But I think there does need to be that individual choice as well. But of course, finding that choice is difficult. And one thing that I particularly find sort of worthwhile considering for everyone is, your meaning of life tends to be set up as a goal, right? So for example, let's say you really did choose family. I got Taihu beer here, Taiwan beer. It's not too bad. So if you really did set up as your meaning of life the goal of having a family, this is something that you could realistically achieve very early on in your life, right? Let's say, okay, you waited until you graduated college. So boom, you're 23, you get married, another year, you got a kid or a couple of kids. So you're 24. So at the age of 24, you have essentially achieved your goal, right? Okay, so let's say you got to wait 18 years for the kid to grow up and now he's an adult. Okay, so now he is off on his own, wait a few more years, so he's 24, cycle starts over again. You're still very, very young by the time that's happened. And by any sort of definition of have a family, you've achieved it. So then what do? Right? You just say, great, meaning of life done. I'm just going to chill out for the next, 40 years of my life, sit on the beach, get fat, and wait to die. That does not sound great, really, right? And I don't think anyone's really going to do that. So the issue here I kind of think about is you find meaning in the moments, right? Or in the goals themselves. But once the goal is achieved, the need that we have is to create a new goal, right? So have a family. Okay, well, we can set up in different goals, right? So first goal was get married. Second goal, have children. Third goal, raise smart children. Fourth goal, help them go to college. Fifth goal, right? You start your own business. Sixth goal, travel the world, something, right? Each one of these things is a separate goal now. And you're not just speaking in generalities like be happy either, right? You're talking about specific things to achieve. So, well, but perhaps we stumbled upon a sort of meaning of life type of thing, which is simply setting and achieving goals. That sort of sense of achievement, having a sense of achievement in life. Yeah, I kind of like that one. I wasn't thinking that as I began that thought, but yeah, having a sense of achievement in life. Or perhaps I would adjust that to a sort of a continuous sense of achievement, where you are constantly working to achieve things, you are achieving them, but you constantly have the new goals set out in front of you, right? So I get this, then I do the next thing and the next thing, and I am finding, or rather I am getting meaning in my life from those things. I like that. So to wrap up, meaning of life, I suppose there is the societal goal. We probably do want to be trying to improve society on a kind of a steady forward progress. Not so much to achieve a utopia, because we know that is probably unrealistic and perhaps even dangerous, right? In a way, it's dangerous because you have ended if you are in a utopia, right? There is no more forward progress. So just like I was kind of saying about your own life, one goal to the next, that's kind of the same for society. Once we achieve one thing, we got to keep moving on. Utopia ends that forward advance, and that's probably where the danger comes from, right? We need to keep changing, we need to keep moving. So societal goals are good. We just need to be a little careful. Individual goals, well, actually before that, genetic goals is kind of out of our hands, but it is worth being aware that there is something happening at that level that really does, in a way, have its own goals, its own meaning of life, right? Which is to perpetuate itself. And that is something to think about, right? And that may, in a certain way, affect how you think about your own life. So then the individual part, you can certainly start the discussion speaking in generalities like happiness or love or something. But then you quickly need to dig deeper and say, well, what am I really talking about here? And the goal is to set goals, I suppose I can say. so that you are constantly working towards something and perhaps working towards something new, because you need that sense of achievement. You need to have that forward progress, just like society. I like that. I think that's a pretty good answer. In this case, would be pretty much against the nihilistic answer. Of course, from a logical point of view, it is very easy to argue of the sort of meaningless of everything, particularly if you step away from the religious point of view. That is why I think it is helpful to bring it very down personal to yourself, right? I want to achieve X. I want to achieve Y. I want to achieve Z. These are why you are here now, right? And is there a larger meaning? Well, maybe that's a question for another day. All right, so another long one, it seems, today. I was sort of aiming for 15 minutes again, but gone long. Hope you guys are finding these helpful for the people who've watched them or who've watched them all the way through. Either way, it's quite interesting just to sort of talk into the great void of the internet and just see what I can come up with. So if you guys have any questions or any thoughts, feel free to message me or whatever. Okay, so I will talk to you guys next time.